when you feel like it, you will smuggle in magic. You will smuggle in magic for miracles in the Bible, you'll smuggle in magic for the origin of life. I can't explain the origin of life at the moment. I mean, nobody can, people are working on it.
But you believe that it will have a naturalistic solution?
Yes, I think that it is a cowardly cop-out to suggest that just because we don't yet understand something, therefore magic did it.
Oh, well, I would agree with that. I mean, the God of the gaps idea.
Well, but that's exactly what you're putting forward, the God of the gaps. You're saying, you're pointing to the origin of life, you're pointing to the origin of DNA and saying, oh, well, okay, Darwin's done everything after the origin of life, but he hasn't done the origin of life. No, that's the God of the gaps.
I think what I'm saying here is that there may well be two kinds of gaps. That is, there are bad gaps that science closes. But could it not be that science can open some gaps? Now, what I mean by that is this. Your assumption, as I understand it, is that there's going to be an exhaustive, reductionist, naturalistic explanation of everything in scientific terms. I don't think so. Now, if there is a God, and if he created this universe, and if, as I believe, he is personal, then I would expect certain things to follow. One, that I would see evidence, not proof, but evidence in the universe that God existed. I feel I see that in the mathematical describability of the universe, in the fine-tuning of the universe, and so on, and in the marvelous sophistication of the world. I'd expect to see God's traces there. I would also expect that there may be occasions when God speaks in special ways, and therefore the more we try to analyze those things in terms of purely reductionist science, it'll get more and more difficult instead of more and more simple. I wouldn't expect there to be many of those places. I think the origin of life might be one of them. And certainly when it comes up into more recent history, you mentioned miracles. The thing that is central for me is the fact that what you call petty, and I feel is vastly significant, because it's touching on something that affects every human being, the question of death. Now, if Jesus really literally rose from the dead as a matter of history, that makes an enormous difference to our view of the world. And so far from being petty, if this is God speaking to us, then I want to take it extremely seriously. Why do you think it's so petty?
Well, of course it makes a huge difference if it's true.
Yes, exactly.
But you've suddenly leapt from sophisticated discussions of the origin of the universe, where one can have a proper discussion about whether some sort of cosmic intelligence could have set forth the laws of physics, and you suddenly jump to a man who lived 2,000 years ago, was born of a virgin, rose again from the dead.
Well, I only did that because you mentioned it first at the beginning.
I think that's petty. By comparison with the grandeur of the universe. I mean, to put my point again, do you really think that the creator of this magnificent edifice of the universe, the expanding universe, the galaxies, he really couldn't think of a better way to get rid of the sins on this one little speck of dust than to have himself tortured? He's the one who's doing the forgiving after all. Couldn't he just have forgiven?
Because this is a moral universe, Richard, and just forgiving doesn't make sense.
I mean, he has to kill himself in order to...
He doesn't kill himself.
Or get himself killed, tortured.
God sends his Son into the world to provide forgiveness and to provide a basis on which he can justly bring forgiveness to me. Now,
he has to get himself killed in order to do that.
Well, half a minute. We need to step back from this a little bit, because it's actually a highly relevant topic. In your world, where is justice to be found?
Well, justice is a human construct of great importance in human affairs, and it's something that most of us have a sense of, which I think probably can be given some sort of Darwinian explanation, but I don't see where you're taking this.
Well, my question is there any ultimate justice? You see, you say this is petty. I'm saying I find myself in a world which is a broken world. I find myself in a world where there's massive injustice, where many people won't get it. We're so privileged. We live in Oxford and so on. We've got enough money to live on, etc., etc. But if there is no God, then there's no ultimate justice. And one of the things that the resurrection transforms for me from pettiness right into center stage is, if this is true, then there's real hope that there be a rational evaluation and fair justice at the end of the world. But atheism doesn't give you that.
Okay, suppose there is no hope, suppose there is no justice, suppose there's nothing but misery and darkness and bleakness, suppose there is nothing that we would wish for, nothing that we would hope for. Too bad. That doesn't make it true just because God would make us feel good.
Well, of course it doesn't.
Well, then why do you bring that argument up?
Because I believe that there is evidence that it is true. I don't believe in the resurrection just like that, because faith is based on evidence.
I've changed your ground again. What you said before was that there is no hope without God, and it sounded...
Well, that's true. That's absolutely true, and you've just admitted it.
So I haven't admitted it. I said, if that's true, yes. So what? I didn't say it was true. But anyway,
but therefore the question to be decided then is there a God, and has he revealed himself? And that's where, again, I think this pettiness needs to be pushed aside, because I can't get to know you as a person. You're not just a scientific object. I could look at you through a telescope or a magnifying glass. I could even dissect you and so on and so forth. But because you are a person, I cannot get to know you unless you're prepared to reveal yourself to me. So the fact that the claim of Christ to be the truth, to be God incarnate, that makes perfect sense to me, because if there is a God who invented this wonderful, marvelous universe with all its science and all the rest, then he has taken the initiative in getting to know us and revealing himself to us. And he's revealed himself to us at the level we can understand. We're persons, he's a person. That at least makes sense. So one of the very important questions to ask is that really true? Or is this simply myth and fantasy?
Well, myth and fantasy for me.
Yeah, well, do you know, that disturbs me for the following reason. Reading your book, The God Delusion, you say that it's under scholarly dispute among historians that Jesus actually existed. Now, I checked with the ancient historians. That is not so. And it disturbed me. History is not natural science. But what I don't understand is this: why you would write something like that.
I don't think it's a very important question whether Jesus existed. There are some historians, most historians think he did, some historians
They certainly do. I couldn't find an ancient historian that didn't.
Well, there are one or two, but I don't really care, actually, because precisely because it's petty. I mean, if you could possibly persuade me that there was some kind of creative force in the universe, there was some kind of physical, mathematical genius who created everything, the expanding universe, devised quantum theory, relativity, and all that. You could possibly persuade me of that. But that is radically and fundamentally incompatible with the sort of God who cares about sin, the sort of God who cares about what you do with your genitals, the sort of God who is interested, who has the slightest interest in your private thoughts and wickednesses and things like that. Surely you can see that a God who's grand enough to make the universe is not going to give a tuppenny cuss about what you're thinking about and your sins and things like that.